This lecture is on the menstrual cycle. So the basics of the menstrual cycle then are as follows. In humans, in human females that is, a mature egg leaves one of the ovaries about every 28 days, though this is wildly variable. And prior to this, the wall of the uterus, on the inside that is, has become lined with blood vessels. And if the egg is fertilized, it will become attached to this uterine lining, if in fact implantation is successful. If not, if it does not wind up implanting, or if it is not fertilized, then the lining and the egg pass from the body. That's the process of menstruation. And this cycle repeats itself approximately every 28 days. And is known as the menstrual cycle. And the menstrual cycle then has different stages. So there are 4 distinct or semi-distinct stages to the human menstrual cycle. So I'm going to go through the stages one at a time. So stage 1 is called the follicle stage. And during this time, the pituitary gland, which is a gland that actually hangs right off the base of your brain. So anyway, the pituitary gland, we will talk about the pituitary gland when I do the endocrine system. So the pituitary gland then secretes follicle stimulating hormone, often known as FSH. And FSH then, as the name implies, causes several follicles, that is to say egg follicles, to begin developing. And usually only one follicle completely matures. Then, as the follicle develops, so this development then is stimulated by FSH. But then as the follicle develops, it in turn secretes the hormone estrogen. And the estrogen stimulates the development of the stimulates the development of the lining, the lining of the uterus. And so this stage now, this business of the egg maturing and then secreting estrogen, the follicle maturing and secreting estrogen, and the lining of the uterus starting to develop, this is all known as the follicle stage. And the follicle stage lasts approximately 10 to 14 days. Then stage 2 is ovulation. So we now have these high blood estrogen levels. And these then cause the pituitary, which started things out then, to, first of all, decrease secretion of follicle stimulating hormone and to begin secreting a different hormone called luteinizing hormone, abbreviated LH. So, as I said, we have these high blood estrogen levels, and that high blood estrogen level then causes two things to happen. One is that follicle stimulating hormone secretion is decreased, and at the same time, the secretion of luteinizing hormone increases. So now we have luteinizing hormone on the rise, and when concentrations of luteinizing hormone in the blood reach a certain level, then ovulation takes place. You recall ovulation, that is the actual release of a mature egg from the ovary, from a follicle in the ovary. So ovulation then takes place in about the middle of the approximately 28-day cycle. Then we have stage 3. And this is the corpus luteum stage. So then, after ovulation, the luteinizing hormone then causes the broken follicle. So that follicle from which the egg was released is now a broken follicle sitting around in an ovary, and stuff starts happening inside that broken follicle. So, as I said, in stage 3, the corpus luteum stage, after ovulation, luteinizing hormone causes the broken follicle then to fill with cells. It just got rid of the egg, and now it's filling up with some other cells, forming a yellow body. That is to say, a little object that looks kind of yellow, called the corpus which means body, luteum, which means yellow. So the corpus luteum is just yellow body in Latin. So the corpus luteum begins, having only come into existence in the very recent past, it begins to secrete another hormone called progesterone. So here is another hormone being secreted, and this hormone, progesterone, then brings about continued growth of the uterine lining. And since it helps to maintain the uterine lining, progesterone is sometimes called the hormone of pregnancy. So take a look at the word. So here we have progesterone. Now, you can actually figure out what this is about. Pro means as in favor of. So pro, gest, as in gestation. So this pretty much tells you what this hormone is about. This then, as I said, is sometimes called the hormone of pregnancy. And progesterone then also stops the development of new follicles. In the ovaries. By inhibiting release of good old FSH. So what this means, therefore, is basically that a person cannot get pregnant if they are already pregnant. So here, if you are busy secreting progesterone, then for the time being, you will not be releasing as much follicle-stimulating hormone, and so you will not wind up having new follicles maturing for a while. So then the corpus luteum stage lasts 10 to 14 days. So then we have stage 4, which is menstruation. So let's just go over here and make a list. Let's do this. So if fertilization then does not take place, then a whole bunch of other things happen. To begin with, secretion of luteinizing hormone decreases. And the corpus luteum, in the absence of the luteinizing hormone, then the corpus luteum breaks down. And this causes a decrease in the progesterone level in the blood. And this, in turn, causes the uterine lining to break down. So we have this whole chain of events. And then the extra layers of lining, the unfertilized egg, or indeed the fertilized egg that failed to implant, and a small amount of blood then pass out of the body through the vagina. And this, the passing of these substances out of the body then, this is menstruation. But of course, the cycle does not stop. So while menstruation is taking place, the amount of estrogen in the blood is dropping. So the pituitary, we now get back to the good old pituitary gland, then increases its output of good old follicle stimulating hormone to stimulate another follicle. So it increases its output of FSH and a new follicle starts to mature. So humans have a menstrual cycle, this ongoing sort of kind of monthly cycle. As I said, it is only approximately 28 days. It can be much shorter, it can be much longer. But it is humans and other primates that have this particular kind of a cycle. Other mammals will have an estrus cycle. It may also be kind of cycling throughout the year, or you may wind up with an estrus cycle that only happens once or twice a year with some big gaps in between. So it depends upon the animal exactly sort of how long this cycle is and whether there are gaps in between. And as I said, an estrus cycle may only take place once or twice a year in some mammals. And that is the end of this lecture on the menstrual cycle.